Deception was a hallmark of this assassination, as it had been in the others. So was cowardice.
Tabari and Ishak. His wife came out, and we told her that we were Arabs in search of supplies. When we entered, we bolted the door on her, so she gave a shout to warn him of our presence. We rushed upon him with our swords as he lay in his bed. He took his pillow and tried to fend us off. Abdallah thrust his sword into his stomach and transfixed him while he was shouting, "Enough! Enough!" At once we went out, but Abdallah had bad eyesight, and he fell off the stairway, bruising his arm or leg. "How shall we know that the enemy of Allah is dead?" one of us asked. "I will go and look," one replied. He set off and mingled with the people. He said, "I found him with the men of the Jews, and with his wife, who had a lamp in her hand." Peering into his face, she said, "By the God of the Jews, he is dead." I never heard more pleasing words than these. We went to the messenger of Allah, and I told him that we had killed the enemy of Allah. We disagreed in his presence about the killing of Sallam, each of us claiming to have done it. The Prophet said, "Bring me your swords." We did, and he looked at them. He said, "This sword of Abdallah killed him. I can see the marks left by bones on it."
There are no words more pleasing to a Muslim than, "A Jew is dead." The first followers of this perverse doctrine, Muhammad's disciples, had been so corrupted by Islam, they believed they were doing God a service by eliminating Jews. They fought over who should be given credit for the kill. It is why Christ warned his disciples, saying, "A time is coming when everyone who kills you will think he is offering his service to God." John 16:2. To celebrate Sallam's murder, Muslim militants sang the following chorus.
Ishak. Allah, what a fine band you have, one willing to kill Sallam and Ashraf. We went with sharp swords like fighting lions. We came upon their homes and made them drink death with our swift-slaying swords. Looking for the victory of our Prophet's religion, we ignored every risk.
The religious doctrine of Islam, that caustic blend of politics and religion, was the motivation behind the forced banishment of the Kainouka, a Jewish township larger than Mecca. It enabled Muhammad to instigate the murder of Jewish journalists. It inspired the grotesque slayings of a Jewish merchant. Muhammad, in cahoots with his demonic spirit, lured men into hellish duty with the dual enticements of worldly booty and heavenly lust. Islam corroded minds and corrupted souls beyond salvation. The Islamic economy and governance was based upon piracy and militancy. Muslim mercenaries could no longer distinguish right from wrong, truth from deceit. Their religitech, or politicized religion, created the culture needed to motivate men to madness and murder. It still does. Hopefully, you have not felt the sting of Islamic terror personally. As such, you may be able to compartmentalize the horror of these events. And that's understandable. We do not know how many Kainouka women and children died after being thrown into the desert. We can only imagine how they suffered. And up to this point, Muhammad's militants had slaughtered barely 100 innocent souls. By the close of the second year of the Islamic era, the first Muslim marauders were still small-time tyrants. Close your eyes, set down the book, turn off the audio, and it will all just fade away. Sorry, it won't work that way. We ignore Islam at our peril. Undiagnosed and untreated, evil festers and grows. Like a cancer, it leaves nothing but death and destruction in its wake. Whether you view the world through the prism of the Islamic scriptures, the Bible, or history, the inevitable consequence of our present course will lead to World War III. I believe over 1 billion people will die in the first third of the 21st century as a result of our ignorance and our tolerance of Islam. Biological and nuclear weapons will be unleashed in a war started by Muslims in pursuit of Jews. It will create hell on earth and destroy the world as we know it. The Quran and Hadith serve as proof that Islam is destructive. With every page, this is made abundantly clear. Left to its own devices, it's obvious where Islam will lead. Muhammad's legacy is terror. From the biblical perspective, the prophecies pertaining to World War III are laid out in the last chapter. So for now, let's focus on the historical justification for my rather dire prediction. To stress the consequence of tolerating Islam, I'm going to share some quotations from the gospel of the 20th century's most famous religious doctrine. This prophet's name was Adolf Hitler. His book was Mein Kampf. His religiothek was Nazism. The consequence was World War II. Even in the tolerant realm of political correctness, Nazism is rebuked. So if I can demonstrate that apart from time and place, Nazism is virtually indistinguishable from Islam, I will have removed the veil of religiosity that protects Islam from scrutiny. Even pacifists understand the consequence of ignoring Hitler. By showing that Mein Kampf and the Quran were authored by the same spirit, and that their motives, missions, and means were indistinguishable, I will have made exposing and rebuking Islam relevant, as Mein Kampf led to the Holocaust and to the brutal death of 55 million people. By proving that Nazism was founded as a religion, as a tool a covetous man used to satiate his personal craving for power, sex, and money, I will have awakened an unquenchable desire to eradicate the religious dogma that inspired it, Islam, before it obliterates all mankind. In that light, I beg your indulgence. Mein Kampf is a 1,000-page rant. I will be revealing passages, edited of verbosity, found in the 1939 English translation I urge you to read, Reynal and Hitchcock, by Houghton Mifflin. We have already reviewed the introduction, one written immediately after the Land for Peace Treaty that severed Czechoslovakia, starting World War II. The translators warned that ignoring the Nazi gospel would have catastrophic consequences. They were right. To discover why they came to that conclusion, and to see why I'm convinced that ignoring the Islamic gospel will lead to World War III, let's dive into the words, world, and mind of Adolf Hitler, and compare them to Muhammad's. Mein Kampf was written from Landsberg-on-the-Lech prison in 1924, precisely 1,300 years after the Kanuka Jews were abused so horrifically in 624 A.D. It was dedicated to 16 martyrs, men Hitler praised as
dead heroes, blood witnesses who continue to serve as brilliant examples for the followers of our movement. They were steadfast in their belief in the resurrection of their people.
The Muslim martyrs at Badr served Muhammad just as aptly. And I'm sure you noticed Hitler's predilection for religious terms. In his opening salvo, he unleashed
witnesses, serve, examples, followers, movement, steadfast, belief, and resurrection.
It wasn't by chance. Although better written and more insightful, the object and style of Mein Kampf is identical to the Quran and Hadith.
Mein Kampf, Preface. I resolved to set forth in 2 volumes the object of our movement and to draw a picture of its development. From this more can be learned than from any purely doctrinary treatise.
Mein Kampf, like the Quran, was written in first person. The royal hour in the preceding quote was collective because Hitler saw himself as being spiritually guided. Although much of Mein Kampf was plagiarized, its formulation and proclamation, like Islam, was the work of a solitary man, one inspired by a dark, deceitful, hateful, and violent spirit.